Okay, thanks for joining the call, everybody. This is Aaron Murakami with A&P Electronic Media at emediapress.com, and today is February 8th, noon Pacific time, and I have Eric Dollard on the call. So our next upcoming conference, the 2020 Energy, Science, and Technology Conference, is going to be a 5-day event rather than a 4-day event. It's going to be in Hayden, Idaho, which is about an hour drive from the Spokane, Washington International Airport. And it'll be at the Hayden Eagles Lodge there, and it's limited to 150 seats, just because that's the size of the venue. And that will be July 8th through the 12th, which is Wednesday through Saturday, or Wednesday through Sunday. And we'll have probably about maybe 16, 17 different presenters, and maybe about 20, 21 different presentations. And Eric is going to be giving 2 new presentations at the upcoming conference, one on Heaviside and one on Fortescue, and he can kind of give a little background on what those are about and what his recent writing projects are about. And you can pre-register for free for the conference. The website is energyscienceconference.com, and you can click any of the registration buttons, and that'll bring you to a registration form. And we're not going to open up for payments until the 10th, which I believe is Monday. We're just getting some final stuff confirmed for the meals, what meals they're able to provide at the lodge. Most likely it's going to be like 5 lunches, and then we're going to have 1 dinner. And it's about $10 per meal, which is super, super cheap for a conference. So it'll be about $60 for 6 meals. But that'll save everybody a lot of time and money, so you don't have to go out and find a restaurant, get back late, and all that kind of thing. So anyway, energyscienceconference.com. You can find all of our past ebooks and presentations from the conferences at emediapress.com. And then also you can find some of our products at vril.io, which is vril.io. And that's where we have the Bedini RPX sideband generator, and then we also have the Lukovsky MWO, which the pulse modulator was engineered by Eric. Also, Eric's website is ericpdollard.com, and there's some different links on there you can check out if you're not familiar with his website. There's a free papers link and a free videos link, and then there's a whole lot of blog posts you can search through on a bunch of different topics. And then Eric's official forum thread is at energeticforum.com. You can search for the Eric Dollard category, and there's quite a few posts in there. And there's a paper which is on electrical engineering that is being transcribed right now. It's 3 different chapters, and those will be posted for free in energeticforum.com. And there's a whole bunch of pictures that go with the text, which is in a PDF called The Electromagnetic Boundary Condition, which is a free PDF you can get at ericpdollard.com. And eventually all 3 of those chapters and those images will be in a ebook available as a paid download eventually. And it will also be a paperback at Amazon. And so before we get open up for questions, Eric, do you want to, is there anything that you want to cover first, or maybe comment on what the upcoming presentations are going to be about?
Yeah. Well, I'm working on the Heaviside book for his 2 major published writings, and some rather remarkable stuff in there, so I'm working that all out right now. And when I disappear into the forest, when winter's over, then that's when I'll write the Verser one, the Fortescue paper. So that's yet to see exactly how that's going to unfold until I start. But the Heaviside project has been very enlightening, and it's kind of no one's ever really done this before. So I'm taking all of this to the next step. It has to be remembered that the science of electricity is long dead and gone, and it's rather fascinating to bring it to life again and see all the details of electromagnetism that have never were known about or have become completely forgotten about. So that kind of gives me the incentive to keep moving forward on this, even though I'm tired of mathematics and want to start building stuff again. I can't build stuff again, so I'm stuck with the mathematics. So, and then I think it's known that a new project has kind of popped up all of a sudden, which I call the Trump motor. It was something conceived by the President Trump's uncle, John Trump, which is a electrodynamic apparatus for either converting electricity into mechanical force or turning mechanical force into electricity at very high RPMs. It uses absolutely no magnets, no windings. It's completely electrostatic apparatus and is capable of some rather insane speeds to match the Tesla turbines that are starting to appear now in the hands of various experimenters.
Yeah, and if anybody goes to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Aaron Murakami, not too long ago I posted a video that might have been about maybe, 20 minutes or something, and it was Peter Lindemann and Eric Dollard and Jeff Moe and myself in my shop kind of going over this Chris Carson rotating capacitor or rotary electrostatic converter, and that's what Eric is talking about. And I'm in the process of putting together some equipment, and if it can get done in time, looks like it might, we might be able to demonstrate it at the conference, but we still have to do a couple tests to see if this equipment that I'm building will actually be able to run that rotating capacitor as a motor. So you can check out that Chris Carson video, and then I think the last time we did a live conference call within a month or two ago or so, that I put a kind of a slideshow with a bunch of pictures and stuff, and we went over that a little bit, so you might want to listen to that last call as well. Do you want to go any deeper into any of the presentation topics or this equipment that I'm kind of putting together based on your plans? Or
no, it's not really time for that yet, so everything's still in the primordial phase. Okay.
So I guess we can go ahead and open up for questions. Before I do want to mention that on ericpdollard.com, there's a donate link, and there's donation information in the right column where EPD Laboratories, Inc. is a 501c3 based out of Nevada. It's a nonprofit charitable corporation, so any donations are tax deductible. And this goes to basically paying the bills. The building's been paid off for a while, but we do have, insurance payments, property tax, electric and other utility bills and telephone bills. And so any help is definitely appreciated. You can either donate by the link, the PayPal link, or you can send checks or money orders to the address on there. It's a P.O. box in Spokane, Washington, and as soon as I get those, I forward those to the deposit those to the bank in Tonopah. And so the entire organization is completely dependent on those donations, and anything helps. So whatever you can pitch in, it's definitely appreciated. So let's see. So everybody is muted out right now. If you have a question on any of these upcoming presentations or the conference, or any of Eric's past presentations or his books, fairly recently, several weeks back, we finally released Versor Algebra Part 2, which is a two-part series that's released right now. There's, I guess, actually a Part 3, which has not really been put together in book form yet.
That's basically, that's going to be the upcoming presentation.
The Fortescue one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you go to Amazon.com and you search Eric Dollard's name, there's 3 books available in paperback. One is called Lone Pine Writings, or actually the main title now is A Common Language for Electrical Engineering, Lone Pine Writings, and this is a compilation of notes he wrote in his car sitting out in the middle of the desert in Lone Pine, California. And that is probably a good basic book for most people to start with. People are always asking, well, what should I start reading? and that kind of sets out the basic electrical dimensions. And most people I know who have an electrical engineering background and they read it, they say it's right on track, and that's definitely a good place to start. And then there's Verser Algebra 1 and 2, which deals with these polyphase type systems and how to analyze any polyphase system, whether it's moon cycles or polyphase electrical systems or pretty much anything, music. So it's not limited to just electrical engineering. And so you can find those on Amazon. And then so let's see, we have somebody, the last 4 digits of your phone number is 1808. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead and say your name, where you're from, and go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's great to be here. You were talking about the Trump motor, and I was wondering, is that the one that Tesla used in his Cadillac, grabbing the electricity out of the ether?
That's actually a fictional story created by a guy named Matthews from Canada.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, just about everything you hear about Tesla after Wardenclyffe is all fabricated. I hate to burst the bubble, but that's the hardcore reality of the situation, unfortunately.
So there is no electricity in the atmosphere at all?
Well, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the so-called Tesla electric car is a fabrication.
Right, I got that. I'm just asking, is there electricity in the atmosphere?
That depends how exactly you're looking at the situation. I mean, there's always electricity, static electricity or DC potential. So are you talking about that, or are you talking about tapping it out of like an ether or what have you?
Well, I'm not quite sure. I mean, scalar energy, isn't that a...
Well, that scalar, now that's another fabrication. That's
really?
That's Tom Bearden, the Army disinformation officer, kind of the Art Bell of the electrical world, fabricated all of that. And the Soviet scalar conspiracy, and it's all crap, pure crap.
Wow.
I actually had a very embarrassing situation in that back in the beginning, when none of this stuff was really talked too much about, San Francisco Public Library had the, what was it, that big book that came out of Yugoslavia in 1956. And it was in a safe, and you had to be guarded while you read it. And they also had all the old books until Dianne Feinstein destroyed all of them in the late 70s. But at any rate, so I was on a pretty good relationship with the head librarian in the technical branch, and it was, who was the guy? There was a guy, Tesla, some kind of Tesla publishing company. That
21st Century Books?
No, it was another guy, Ratzlaff. And he came out with all this, there was like 5 or 6 kind of, staple paper type books on the Tesla this and the Tesla that. And I had the library order those. They did that for me. And when they showed up, it was a bunch of gobbledygook by Tom Bearden, and I had to apologize for having them go through the time and effort to get a lot of material, which was basically pure drivel.
So anything Tom Bearden has to say is pretty much
disinformation.
Disinformation.
It's actually engineered to knock you off the track, and at that time, I was associated with Tom Brown with this beginning borderland science conversion from evil spirits into actual, out there science. And Tom Brown had a remark: to get involved with Tom Bearden is the kiss of death. And I actually met him in one of these conferences, which was extremely hostile to me. In fact, I think the video that I did there is actually completely banned. by the U.S. Psychotronics Association. There's absolutely no access to it whatsoever, and which was one of my best presentations. And Bearden was not really happy to see me, and he went through a bunch of effort to try to scare me away from all the Tesla stuff, telling me, that these spirits were going to appear, and basically I just called him an idiot and walked away, and then proceeded to harass the entire disinformation crowd. Elizabeth Rauscher was another one, and then Toby Grotz, the IEEE disinformation crowd. Elizabeth Rauscher is the spooky crowd, and it was disgusting, but I made absolutely sure to piss everybody off. Everybody. I loved it. I was actually paid to do that.
Well, I just can't. I mean, who was that? The government that put him up to it?
Yeah, that's kind of like the situation, here, national security area, the so-called Area 51, which is just parrot talk. There's like numbers of areas. Area 51 might not even be in operation anymore. And, so the Air Force created this hoax to cover up the J.J. Thomson Nazi Germany electric spacecraft, which apparently the Russians were way ahead of that, and that scared the pants off everybody, so they had to create a hoax, so they started the whole UFO thing. And, so it's brilliant. It's actually brilliant because, everybody's convinced the government lies. So if the government engages in a giant campaign to say that UFOs don't exist and then sends one of their disinformation agents out there, Art Bell, puts him on the air to turn the whole thing into a big mythology, then being that we know the government lies, then there has to be aliens. It's kind of how I used to go about things when I was in a combat situation with Commonweal and Bolinas, is that's how you screw with people's minds. So basically, pretty much everything that's out there on Tesla, other than what Tesla wrote himself, specifically wrote himself, is all bullshit. It's all bullshit.
So the Brotherhood of the Bell back in the 30s, the Germans didn't invent the anti-grav?
Well, I don't know about that, but I do know that the Germans were working on electric spacecraft.
Right.
And then when the Russians came in and the allies, so-called allies, England and what have you, and America came in, it was a big grab fest to see who could get what. Apparently the Russians got better information than, or how would you say, more useful information from their glom than the Americans did, and then Stalin had 2 or 3 of these things built and harassed the United States with them, and one of them crashed in New Mexico, and that's when it was necessary to create the UFO myth.
I was wondering about, ham operators. I think I remember reading something about ham operators can grab electricity, as Tesla did, from the Earth with a couple of rods, wires, that are in the ground. The rods are in the ground. The wires are connected to the 2 rods that are in the ground, and then you can grab electricity that way. Is that?
I have no knowledge of that, but I do know in my research facility in the Mojave Desert that these transients associated with the Earth currents and what have you.
Right.
Can reach rather significant magnitudes, but they're oscillatory impulses. They don't really last for long, but they can damage solid state equipment. They can get up to like about 300 volts out of a 800-foot long antenna array.
Okay. So all the transistors burn out at a certain point.
Yeah, that's why it's good when you're dealing with this kind of stuff that the antenna part of the system is never use solid state, always use vacuum tubes.
Oh, okay. Huh. And I was wondering, the guy that was talking first, he had a website also?
The guy that was talking first?
Yeah, me, Aaron?
Yes, Aaron, yes.
Yeah, which website?
The one that you mentioned.
Okay, so there's several. EnergyScienceConference.com is the conference website.
I have that down.
Okay, there's eMediaPress.com.
eMedia.
Yeah, eMedia Press, like printing press.
Right, I have that. I have.
Okay, and then there's vril.io. That's vril.io.
Yes,
and that has a couple devices on there. And then there's a couple forums. I didn't give this earlier, but there's EnergyScienceForum.com.
Okay, I got that.
And then there's also EnergeticForum.com.
Maybe that's the one, energetic. Also, on the Vril, I came across this probably about a dozen years ago. Exactly what is Vril? Is it, I'm not. I mean, I know they have a Vril society. I guess I don't know. That might be propaganda too, but I'm not quite sure.
You want to answer that, Eric, or?
Well, you probably should answer it because you found the original source.
Okay. Well, the term Vril, yeah, I mean, there's these associations with the Vril Society and all this, but they just, copied the term. Like a lot of people will take on a different terminology. In the late 1800s, there was a Rosicrucian named something like Lord Edward Buttweiler, something like that. But in any case, he wrote a book called The Coming Race, and it's about his story about going into the inner earth and encountering these beings who were very, very advanced. They looked like humans, but they were, very advanced, and they had mastery over the Vril using like a scepter or a wand, and they could use it to heal, they could use it to kill, basically the life force energy. And it was the first reference to automatons, which are robots. And so it was basically considered the world's first science fiction story. It was the first science fiction book. And you can get a free download online if you want. But that's basically where that terminology comes from. So, chi, ki, prana, life force energy, vril, it's pretty much all this referencing the same stuff.
Orgon also?
Yeah, it's related to that, yeah. But there's, seems to be different manifestations of it. Maybe Eric can talk a little bit about Orgon. He's been revisiting a lot of the Wilhelm Reich stuff. But maybe we can maybe move on to some other questions. And, if you have more questions, a question after we get a chance to have some other people ask, just hit 5-star and we can come back to you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, go ahead then. Thank you very much.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll point out that Jerry Vassilatos used the term Vril extensively in his writings. He seemed to try to quantify it. Orgone is not a story. Orgone is something that actually exists. That's Wilhelm Reich's interpretation of the ether, and that is a concrete reality.
Yeah, and last year at the 2019 conference, Dr. James DeMeo, he gave 2 presentations. One was on the ether and one was on the orgon. And if you go to eMediaPress.com and you just type in DeMeo, D-E-M-E-O, in the search box, it'll bring up his last couple presentations, and he has a new book he released. But he's kind of the leading authority on Wilhelm Reich's work. So you might find that interesting. Before I open up for a question, Eric, do you want to properly define scalar, as opposed to the nonsense being pushed by like Konstantin Weil and some of these others?
Yeah, all this comes out of the now defunct scalar potential, vector potential terminology that was used back around the time of James Clerk Maxwell, which really was kind of a big distraction in the whole mathematical process. It had no physical existence or whatsoever. This has been kind of a focus of almost all of my presentations, is to get out of this obsolete, ill-conceived mathematical whatever you might want to call it, that all these academias are engaged in and they cling to, but nothing can ever come out of it. So Heaviside eliminated that. Hertz eliminated it. I think even J.J. Thomson pulled out of it. Everybody pulled out of it. But Bearden's big contention is that we have to go back to that, which then lands you in the same debacle that Helmholtz ended up in when he tried to circumvent Maxwell or build on top of it. Is you have thousands of mathematical formulations and whatever, but it has absolutely no practical, real-world value to it whatsoever. So Heaviside managed to present the situation such that all the various terminologies were algebraic, and then you end up with a scalar term, which is what direct current is. It's scalar in time. It's just a magnitude. There's no direction. There's no change. It's just a constant. It's the same thing if you have a DC transmission line, let's say, with no losses, and you run your voltmeter down the line, then the voltage will read the same at any time, at any distance from the sending end, and therefore not only is it scalar in time and being DC, but it's scalar in space, in that there's no discrimination with respect to space or time or anything else. It's just the same everywhere. Atmospheric pressure is kind of like that.
Like temperature.
Temperature, atmospheric pressure inside a room. It's the same everywhere, so that's called space scalar. Then there's the longitudinal term that is, in conventional electrical engineering, is kind of suppressed. It's the combination of the scalar term and the longitudinal term that might be misinterpreted into the Bearden scalar concept, but that's not a good way to go about it, and you'll end up getting the wrong sign on the longitudinal term. It'll be positive, or negative instead of positive. And then there's two circularly polarized transverse terms, and that's kind of the electromagnetism that we use for radio communications and sending electricity down coaxial cables and waveguides and what have you. So there's one is clockwise, the other one is counterclockwise. So that basically is called the Heaviside telegraph equation. And before Heaviside, none of this stuff was ever worked out. It was all just basically a bunch of exotic mathematics that produced nothing useful at all, even on just a purely understanding level. So when Heaviside managed to put this in a more algebraic form and start to define things and the terminologies that we start to use today and the symbols that we start to use today, then Kennelly, Edison's chief engineer, he picked up on it and wrote some very important books on this subject, and Steinmetz worked with him, and then out of that, then we have the practical electrical engineering, which gave us what we have today, and then the electrical engineering community, so to speak, and educational system has disposed of all that, and now all of that's forgotten and kind of in a worse case than we were in the vector potential days, and now that no one even, they couldn't do a simple calculation if their life depended on it. They have to go to the internet, and then the internet, being that it's infected with the enemies of our country, will here and there put wrong answers in, and so now the whole electrical system is completely out of control. There's some kind of malevolent element that's turning it into a massive interference generator, but I've talked about that extensively.
Okay. All right, so let's see. We've got James from San Francisco. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you if you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, guys. Really awesome discussion so far. I'm just kind of thinking about how great it is to have Aaron and Eric and that whole team just kind of like cohering their ideas, getting more and more on the same page. And so really excited to be here.
Great, thanks.
So I have kind of like a two-part question. I don't know if they're related, but possibly. So I live out here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Spent a lot of time on the coast, doing some, like, ocean sort of activities, fishing, diving. So I was out gathering mussels yesterday and pulling for eels up by, I guess, by the San Gregorio area. And we're driving back, and we see I'm looking out the window, and I see this kind of familiar-looking white rectangular building with these, at kind of a weird angle. Kind of reminds me of something I heard about Tesla. Oh, and there's a big antenna field.
That's the old KFS installation. That used to be our competitor. We were KPH, and I was lucky enough to get some very exotic receivers to go with one of those antennas, but I had learned that, unfortunately, the hams had gotten their fingers on the installation, and the guy that owned it was less than interested. So, unfortunately, that's the last intact place. But you can't do anything in that part of the world anymore.
Sure. Oh my God.
Everything. You can't do anything there. That place is hideous.
Yeah, tell me about it.
And overregulated, and there's nothing functional there at all anymore.
Right. So
Everybody's leaving.
Yeah, you can really tell as like someone who's been going to the ocean his whole life. Now there's a lot more people there, kind of doing the same thing, taking all the fish or whatever. Yeah, you can't even catch an abalone anymore. That's illegal. So that's pretty sad.
Everything's illegal in California except for what should be normally illegal.
That's good. Okay, so that's the KPSF, did you say?
KFS building.
KFS, okay.
So that was a receiving site for ship-to-shore communications, and the transmitting site used to be in Palo Alto, and then they moved it to the old VOA site in Dixon, and then all the HF stuff kind of dissolved, and then I had my own HF facilities that I moved from Bolinas down to the Mojave Desert, but that all got destroyed, and now the amount of money and what have you to put all that back together again is just, I've given up.
Yeah, I've taken a couple trips up to Bolinas, and I can pretty much vouch for everything you've said about it. It's really creepy now. Definitely used to be something amazing. I saw the old crane that used to hook onto that eye hook on the Alexanderson generator. That blew me away.
Yeah, that building used to be my laboratory.
I know. It's just it was so weird to go there.
The thing is trashed and gutted. Commonweal sent vandals in there and tore everything apart. And then in General Electric, when they took the thing back when RCA died, they did a lot of damage. And then MCI got in there, and then they stripped out the substation. And then finally, when what was left was to be turned over to me, I managed to finally stop the advancement of Commonweal, which was a major effort. Ended up with some friends dead out of it. And Greenpeace came in and grabbed the whole thing, and then the gun was pointed at my face, and I was told to take a hike, and that was the end of that.
Wow. Yeah, I hate to say it, but...
So watch out for this... I just got a nasty taste of it. Somebody accidentally sent me a book that just sent me on the warpath. Any of this spirituality and New Age and all that kind of stuff, that's Commonweal. And that crowd that basically, they came in and they took over our entire town in 5 weeks. And pretty much destroyed the entire RCA facility. And harassed one of my friends to suicide, and a couple of others. The stress was so heavy they almost died out of it. These people are treacherous, absolutely treacherous, and there's nothing you can do to stop them. And that's the end of that. That's one of the most fantastic installations on the face of the earth, with the ley lines that go through there, and electrical facilities and what have you that feed the place, and its history and all that. And here you get these New Agers that are going to tell us they want to merge science and spirituality and heal the world. And here was a facility to do it, and they smashed everything, and consequently they leave a trail of broken families because they grab their kids so they can give them to the state politicians, and they harass people to death. They made my friend Philo go insane. They made a friend of mine's girlfriend go insane. Like I said, they made one of my friends commit suicide. So when you go there now, you get to see the distillate of all of that. That place is, we call it the occupied territories.
That's what it's like, actually. I hate to say it, but I'm pretty sure they're still there, the same group. And I'm kind of a natural-born fence jumper, so I think I got to see a lot more than they would have wanted me to, because they've really got the place locked down. Yeah.
Well, that's Greenpeace's job as a branch of the National Park Service. National Park Service is a really nasty organization. Not only are they just absolutely vicious with the visitors, as they call them, to the places that they've commandeered, but they have a mandate to destroy all of our technological history. And Greenpeace gets the cream of the crop when they get in there and grab everything or whatever. Then Dick Dillman and his radio playpen, so they basically finish the place off, and which is too bad, because the Coast Guard, which still runs a facility close by, was ready to take over under guidance and put the thing back on the air and keep it in service to the maritime community, but Greenpeace and Commonweal are so powerful because, well, basically, Greenpeace is the Russian brand of communism, and Commonweal is the Chinese branch of communism. So needless to say, they have great difficulty sharing the facility.
Gosh.
At any rate, we're kind of getting distracted on that subject. Yeah. So,
well, let's questions, James, or?
I had one more optimistic venture. You know, I'm so glad that you're still here doing your thing, Eric, and bringing the light to that kind of horrible situation. You know, they're trying to take technology away from us, and here you are bringing it back. So thanks for that. And I have a question about when you were living out here in Sonoma, going to school, and doing that kind of project with the planetary interference, from what I understand.
You were kind of Sonoma's where I was doing at Sonoma State College.
Yep.
Yeah, that was the ionospheric research with the receivers, special receivers I was talking about that I got from RCA. That was my opportunity to study that entire solar cycle, which I believe was 22, and its relationship with the Earth's field and the ionosphere and people's behavior, and it was a 4-year project.
So my question
is then this slimy Greek showed up called Demodopoulos, and he trashed the entire operation there at Sonoma State, turned it into some kind of circus, and another $1 million of equipment went to the dump, and I ran off to the bushes one more time.
Wow, that's one I don't think we've heard. At least I don't.
No, you won't hear about that.
I know it's happened to you so many times, but I guess there are more. Well, I did have kind of a quantitative, comparative question as far as the reception that you got from the planets or whatever. Was it kind of just like relative to the day layer sort of interference, or was it more along the lines of what you're getting now with the seismic kind of more qualitative, possibly?
Well, there it was strictly ionospheric research. So, you know, there was the solar flux and the Earth's magnetic field and how the planetary configurations. It was basically a duplication, and that's ultimately why I got the receivers from RCA. Was they had determined RCA was using radio astrology for decades. A guy named Nelson was the one that developed, one of their scientists.
Okay.
And then my effort was to take the old equipment after they stopped using that because of the satellites, and then with the advantage of the fact that that particular solar cycle was a really quite active one, was to duplicate and prove all that. And I graphed it all out, and sure enough, everything that was said was correct. And unfortunately, when I gave all of that material to Borderland for safekeeping, they destroyed it because they took on the belief through some kind of Steiner spin-off that electricity is the work of the devil. So Borderland and its members decided to basically destroy all of my material that was given to them for safekeeping. Story of my life.
Yeah, I was kind of curious about your falling out with Borderlands as well. I knew there had to be one because those guys just aren't really part of the picture anymore.
Yeah, well, it started off okay, but then some other people showed up and kind of embezzled the situation and pushed me out.
Right.
And they all went their various ways and glommed on to my material and what have you, and left me basically standing in the street.
Gosh, well, thank you. That's kind of all I had. I'm going to look into the Nelson thing for more of a look into that.
There's a book that was written about that particular period of solar activity, which was kind of a doomsday book, but nevertheless it had all kinds of fascinating references in it. And it was pretty accurate in that the solar activity just went beyond during that planetary alignment. You know, I was there. I measured it. And it's called the Jupiter effect. I think it should be easy to find.
I think I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Oh, okay. All right, well, I got to let someone else take the mic here.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, James.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. If your number ends in 6710, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. If you can go and say your name, where you're from, and go ahead and ask your question. And if we can just kind of stick to the point, maybe more technical stuff, I think that'd be good. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, hey guys, this is Dayon from Ontario, Canada. Just want to say quick thanks to Aaron and Eric for these recurring calls. Much appreciated. Just wanted to ask Eric about his, if he has any direct experience or any thoughts about how to tap into a reactive power, whether in a generator or, and his thought, and if like parametric variations, oscillations are connected to that.
Oh, not right off. I mean, I kind of have presented a lot of material on that, but nothing that's really seemed to have kind of turned into anything practical, so...
Yeah, because I remember you referenced...
What's that now?
I remember you referenced a Russian paper, I forget.
Yeah, I've got that here. That was...
yeah.
It dealt with that parametric variation, and I wrote a lot of papers on it, and then there was an apparatus that was built in Santa Barbara, which there's a video that exists of me testing that thing, which was a parametric magnetic type of deal, and its efficiency was anomalous for sure, so that kind of gave me the idea that this parametric variation dimensionally indicates that it's possible to synthesize energy. So that's when Chris Carson built the rotating variable capacitor, which was the electrostatic analog of the magnetic one in Santa Barbara. And then he died. And so now Aaron has that, and we'll pick up on that when possible to see, what the performance is. I'm not expecting any energy gain, but you never know until you make measurements.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Did you say, sorry for that magnetic one, was that one you see in person, or was it, I just want to know like a little bit more about your experience with that.
Well, it's a Borderland video. I forget what the name is, something like Free Energy, whatever.
Research. Free Energy Research?
Yeah. And
okay.
I think that thing's still around somewhere, but it got screwed up. Somebody screwed it up and turned it into something else.
Okay.
And I kind of...
yeah, I would be interested in seeing definitely the electrostatic version as well. I think that's really interesting, but it's just from a...
Well, my ultimate direction to go with this was to use a magnetic amplifier, which, is again a parametric device, and I designed a whole system. And then the guy, John Polakowski, that was working on that particular project, embezzled about $5,000 from us, so I retained the equipment, but I can't find anybody interested in pursuing it. Basically, this stuff's all dead horse. I don't really have any interest in it anymore. So no one else is interested in funding any of this or what have you, and no one's interested in working on it. So I can't be interested. So I did my thing. There was, millions and millions of dollars of equipment were provided, RCA and Bell Telephone and what have you. Massive installations were built. And then when things got tight, nobody cared. It all went to the dump, and now no one really gives a damn about any of it. So the only thing I can do now is just play around with mathematics, and whatever that stuff was from a past era, it's over with for me.
Yeah, I guess that's the one kind of frustrating roadblock is just sometimes the costs of experimenting with this type of technology can it's my colleagues in the electrical seismic thing, which are some rather well-placed PhDs. They're not doing any better. Yeah.
And these guys, their names are in all the reference books, or in the references and all the books on the subject. And one I know personally, and then a good friend of mine, he works with these people, and I know people, like in the San Francisco Water Department and what have you, to try to go somewhere with this stuff, because the seismic forecasting is purely engineerable. It has solid theoretical base, and the USGS just sabotages all of it, and there's no money for any of this stuff anymore at all.
Yeah.
Society is going digital. It is not interested in reality. All it's interested in is stimulation, entertainment. So the only thing that I can do now that fits within that realm is the project that I call the musical seismograph, because that's entertainment. And because it's entertainment, then there's people that seem like they might want to fund that project, and I have rather substantial facilities that have been provided to me by various agencies, and I don't think they're too happy that, they provided all these facilities, and no one wants to spend any money to put any of it together. It's just no money. Yet, here somebody sends me a book about this great philanthropist, and his new age and spirituality and science and all that, and what do? They give their money to Commonweal so that they can grab people's kids and make them slaves to politicians. That's where the money is.
Yeah. Well, nonetheless,
you got all kinds of money.
Yeah.
Just go right to your state capital. We'll set you right up.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the mathematical and theoretical work can at least establish some basis for future work. So that's pretty much. Oh, actually, one more question. Sorry, quickly. Just in terms of that whole parametric oscillation stuff, the only way I could, again, I'm not too experienced in the field, but the only way I could think of playing with the inductance and changing the capacitance would either be some switching or some mechanical.
Saturating iron cores, magnetic amplifier.
Saturating, okay.
That's the best way to do it, magnetic amplifier.
Okay. And is there any online?
Just do a internet search. There's all kinds of people have experimented, using little Radio Shack transformers and saturable reactors, and I wrote a lot of stuff about it on the Energetic Forum. You probably can pick it out somehow. I'm not certain. That's been so long ago. I don't really quite remember.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for answering my questions. I hope to make it out to the conference, if not this year, next year for sure. And see you guys again. So thanks for your time.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, let's see. Frank in California. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you if you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Hey, Aaron. Hey, Professor Eric. It's me, Ennis, from Canada.
Hey.
It's nice to hear from you guys again. I've been a little bit dormant, taking Professor Eric's advice from last time, and just looking deeper into the work. And recently, I came across a kind of algebra that was very eerie towards the description that Professor Eric was that provided last time in terms of an algebra that could perhaps handle the calculations in space. And there was a presentation that was recently on it. I believe it was called geometric algebra, which has its roots in Grassmann's development and whatnot. And I was just wondering whether or not you've actually encountered this, and has this something that you've used before, and your take on the actual math, because ultimately it has this product that ends up always representing both the symmetrical and anti-symmetrical components involved in the calculation. And it was really, really similar to what I noticed in the multiple coordinate systems lecture, where in the end you show how the calculation shows how much Hertzian part of the electric wave you have, and how much of the I think the other component you call the Tesla component. I guess it was just the conjugate, and that math seems so similar in character and nature. And I just want to know more if you ever encountered and used it before.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the geometric algebra you're talking about. I remember that there was that presentation. I wasn't at it, and I think I talked to the guy briefly, but I'm not certain about exactly what that is. But if you're telling me that it's similar, that's interesting. I probably should look into it a little more.
Yeah, it's definitely similar.
Otherwise, I started off with the Fortescue. Well, actually, Steinmetz was the first one to really make this solid by, coming up with an algebra for alternating current, and laid the kind of the groundwork for all this. And then there was a mathematician by the name of Alexander McFarlane that kind of, I don't know how to say it, but he gathered up all the ideas of that era and put them in a comparative situation so that you can see. The title of the paper is called The Imaginary of Algebra. And that's kind of what I started with. And then I wrote two papers way, way back on the park bench days when I was a street person. One was called Symbolic Representation of the Alternating Electric Wave, and then there was one of the General Electric Wave. And this symmetrical coordinate system thing, well, I learned that way back in high school when I was teaching myself to be an electrical engineer. Never really thought too much about it, other than, I have to apply it in my work. And then later on, in salvage run, I managed to end up with a book on the subject, and I don't know how many years I struggled with that book to try to make some sense out of how this was being applied and how it was derived. And then I found another book, which was the first real book written on the subject. And unfortunately, it had one chapter in there that gave the general equation, and then I worked on that for quite some time to get all the knots out of it and what have you. And that's the Versor algebra books that I came up with now. So that's kind of the most generalized and practical form of the mathematics I think that's available, because it's too hard to learn from the books because there's too many subscripts. The theoretical basis for it is not really accurate. So I decided to start from scratch and reinvent the whole thing, kind of like, the what was it, the Lone Pine writings.
Right. For sure.
So, as far as the Lone Pine writings go, my Heaviside presentation is going to be a direct extension of that.
Mm.
So where Lone Pine's writing left off, that's where this one's going to pick up. And then the terms that were learned in the Lone Pine writings will be applied to come up with kind of the general equation for electric induction, which has thus far has never been done.
Right.
Is new. So that's when I sit down at the end of the day and put the music on and listen to it and look at all my notes, it's to really see the innards of what's going on. So it's not, what I'm presenting is not really like a finality or designed to be like, some kind of just practical formula, even though there's a lot of practical examples that will be given in it. But it kind of gets into electromagnetism and opens up more questions than it answers, which is a good starting point for the science of electricity if it could ever get going again. So that kind of offers me the encouragement to keep going on it. And I'm even thinking, and when I give the presentation, is to close it with the piece of music that I recommended, which is from Handel's Power of Music, which is Handel actually takes the whole four-quadrant relationship and writes a piece of music to go with it, which is very powerful, and it kind of opens up an even wider view of what is meant by power that goes back to my Power of the Ether presentation. So I don't know if that can be done or not, but I think I might be able to work that in, so that not only will there be a bunch of mathematical symbols that a lot of people will have trouble with, but once the geometric form is established in the mind of the audience, then I just basically hit the start button and make it run. I think it'll work out pretty good. I think it'll put an image in people's minds so that it's no longer just an abstract mathematical thing, but they'll be able to hear it and feel it.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Definitely, my plan is to when I send you a letter, I'm going to also attach some of the actually probably even a smaller book of about geometric algebra, because it's actually really similar to a lot of the things that you've been talking about. And there was this one article that I read. This is just a follow-up comment, and then I'll be done. But there was a follow-up article that I read about a historian that was looking through the development of Steinmetz's work, and being that he was German and Grassmann himself was German, who originated the whole idea of the geometric product, which is the special concept that takes basically the dot and the cross product together, or in essence the two conjugate terms, which from Steinmetz's perspective he worked out with the whole real and reactive power, and apparently that's where his inspiration came from, and it was a really interesting article actually. And there's even insane developments where they've actually reduced a lot of the algebra to perform versal calculations that allow there's a software that they can model things in space using versors just through geometric algebra. So there's a lot of interesting developments in that regard, and it's really just
anything you can send me, do that so I can, because I'm kind of on a one-dimensional track from the electrical engineering standpoint and the references I have. So If there's
Right.
anything, that expands it out or what have you, I'm very interested. I would really like to get that.
Perfect. Well, my plan is to send a letter by the end of the month, so hopefully we'll be able to attach everything and send it over to the same address.
Okay, I'm not getting all your words because of the silly phone distortion, but I got the most of it.
Okay, perfect. Well, I really appreciate your time, Professor Eric. Once again, truly a pleasure as always. Thank you so much, and also thank you, Aaron, for hosting the call. And that'll be it from my end.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, the geometric presentation that Eric mentioned that was at the conference last year is by Dr. Jack Hanlon. He doesn't like to be referred to as a doctor, but he is. I think his PhD is either in electrical engineering or mathematics or something. So you can go, if you're interested in that presentation, you can go to emediapress.com, and if you type in Jack Hanlon, Hanlon, in the search section, it'll come up with an article that links to his, where you can get his presentation, and that was called The Secret Power Source for Over-Unity Switched Reluctance Generators, and it's kind of a theoretical presentation that's pretty much kind of revolves around geometric algebra and his ideas on how to use reactive power. So Dan in Ontario, you might find that presentation interesting. Jack was a former Los Alamos scientist, and I believe he was a math professor. Not sure what college or university. But in any case, that's available. Let's see. I guess we can move on. Let's see. Jeremiah. So let's see.
Oh.
Yeah, who's that?
Jeremiah.
Okay. Yeah, so I have Jeremiah Ferwerda. Is that how your last name is pronounced?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So Jeremiah, he is the one that has been experimenting with the different variations of the Tesla turbine, vacuum type system, multi-stage Tesla turbine setup, and has been collaborating with Paul Townley in the UK. And Paul, I think his username is Sound IEUK, something like that, in Energetic Forum. There's a whole open source thread where he's kind of put his work and ideas and stuff in there. And Jeremiah is in Idaho, and he was at the conference last year, kind of showed a demo of his little two-stage turbine, showing that it creates a vacuum rather than a pressure on the intake. And a couple weeks back, Peter Lindemann and I went to a shop in Idaho to watch the demonstration of his hot-cold two-stage Tesla turbine system, where it has a hot tank on the front end, only about 180 degrees range or so, 170, 80 Fahrenheit, and on the back end is a cold tank, and a vacuum pump is applied on the output to evacuate the air. And when you put the vacuum on there and evacuate the air, that water on the front will start boiling at a low temperature, and that vapor expands, runs the front side of the turbine, and the back side is producing enough vacuum to actually sustain the low temperature boiling on the front end to keep itself running, at least until the temperature drops. And that end, he's able to shut the vacuum pump off. So it's not the vacuum pump running it. The Tesla turbine, a two-stage setup, creates its own vacuum to continue to boil the water on the front. So it's pretty interesting, and he's looking at different configurations, to put a generator and stuff on it. And so that kind of goes into what Eric started off with in the beginning, talking about that Chris Carson rotating capacitor type setup, where it's President Trump's uncle, Donald J. Trump, was one of the world's leading authorities in the early 1900s on electrostatics, and actually has co-invented some stuff with Van de Graaff. A lot of people know the Van de Graaff name, but they don't know that Donald Trump's uncle was right there with him developing a lot of this stuff. And so, anyway, Eric, that's Jeremiah's on the call right now with you, experimenting with that Tesla turbine.
Okay, sounds good.
So, Jeremiah, do you kind of want to share what direction you're kind of going with that and the generator side of it?
Yeah, so as far as the cryophorus system goes and running the turbine under vacuum, vaporizing the water, the electrical potentials of it are very apparent. I recently did an experiment with opening up the cryophorus. I warmed up one side and had a valve dividing the cold and the warm side. Everything was under vacuum until I started to build up a little tiny bit of pressure. It was still negative below atmospheric pressure. But once I built up a little bit of pressure, I opened that valve up, and I got a little shock from the valve. And that was just there was no turbine or nothing in there. It was just flowing from the warmer side to the cooler side of the cryophorus in low pressure. So that definitely highlights the electrostatic potentials of the system. And right now, I mean, all the other possibilities and all the other uses aside, right now we want to do some experiments to figure out where do we put our electrodes in the turbine, because we know that the electrostatic effects can happen inside of the cryophorus system. And I guess a question for Eric Dollard would be, where would be a good place to start as far as placing your electrodes to get that electrostatic generation DC, just for a start for the experiment? Like where would the electrodes possibly be?
Well, that's a good question, because I don't really know, what the geometry is, or I don't see anything. I'm just hearing what you're talking about, so I'm not certain about that. It's opened up like another avenue. But Tesla did come up with an electrostatic generator, kind of like the Van de Graaff, to be used for his death ray, and it was more of a fluid dynamic rather than having like a belt or what have you. So, if it's the fluid dynamics that's generating the electrostatic, and not the moving of conductors or dielectric structures or what have you, and like capacitor plates or coils or what, then the Tesla electrostatic, his version of the Van de Graaff generator, uses the same principle, but I can't really tell you, where or what to put it in unless I know, what's flowing or what have you. So you're kind of on your own on that one. But what I am looking towards is the outboard electrostatic generator that produces significant electrical horsepower that connects to the Tesla turbine. That's my concentration right now, and also to operate it backwards as a motor, so that the Tesla turbine can be run as a pump, and then seeing what the difference is between it being a motor and a generator. Does the law of reciprocity apply anymore? So I've got two 5,000 watt AM radio transmitters here that have 3,000 watt audio amplifiers in them to generate the frequency. Being that I have a pair, I have two-phase, so to speak, four-phase actually. So I'm looking in terms of building some kind of 75,000 RPM quadrature phase electrostatic motor built on the thing that Chris Carson built and the thing that Trump talks about in his paper. And then there's also a patent, I forget the guy's name, that gets into these things. So I'd like to see something like that sitting on the bench spinning at 75,000 or 100,000 RPM, driving, something else to use that power up.
Okay, so the biggest thing that I would think of was the periphery, or the diameter of the disc, or the motor. Of course, the faster the larger the diameter per RPM, the faster the periphery speed. So if you have you got a 3-foot diameter rotor, to get, say, to supersonic speeds, you only have to go like 8,000 RPM. So, of course, are we looking at the periphery speed or are we looking at the RPMs? If we were only looking at the RPMs, then we could get a tiny turbine easily to 75,000 RPM. But
you have to remember, I know nothing about turbines, so I can't really help you with a lot of stuff there because I'm not a turbine guy. So I don't know, what the relations are or what have you. But the fact that people are doing these things, and somebody showed up, and asked me, well, what kind of generator am I going to put on my Tesla turbine? And I have to stop and think. And then I go electrostatic, and then sure enough, when I get the papers on it, I find the algebraic relationships, and so that's what I'm trying to move forward with.
Okay. So we know about there's on the internet, there's some, they show some of Tesla's research where he was generating electricity. He said he could get over 11 million volts with the electrostatic generator, and all it was a simple turbine in a vacuum with water in the vacuum, and it was circulating.
I've never seen that. Where did you? Is that something that Tesla wrote, or is that something that somebody wrote and then put Tesla's name on it?
Well, most of what we know about Tesla has just been like the top 5% of the information that's been able to leak through the media, basically. It's kind of how I see it. And there's, the death ray. Tesla didn't want it to be called the death ray. My theory was that his particle accelerator was his way of transferring transferring electricity wirelessly, kind of like a laser.
He called that level of work, he called it teleforce.
Mm-hmm.
And there actually is something that he wrote on that.
So I could send...
Leland Anderson wrote on that subject and put out a book or a paper or something on his teleforce project, which actually gives all the details. There's no real, there's no secrets. He shows exactly how to build it.
Yep, and part of the biggest part is there's a diagram. I don't know if it's the exact same reference, but there's a diagram showing just the exhaust of the turbine going to the intake of the turbine, and then you spin the rotor at high speeds, and it circulates that. Just like a Van de Graaff generator, instead of circulating a physical belt, you're actually just circulating vaporized water in a cryophorus where it already wants to vaporize.
That's how the Tesla version of the Van de Graaff generator worked.
Yep. So of course I want to get into that. The first thing I want to do is make the system just useful, and it's the very basic level one is just spinning a regular generator, a physical, a generator instead of the electrostatic area of research. We'll definitely want to do some more experiments on that in the future, but for now, the biggest thing about going high RPM is having the generator connected straight to the shaft, directly to the shaft, instead of having a belt or a chain or a pulley.
Oh, no. You can't have any of that. That's why this electrostatic route is the way to go.
I've done all the experiments, and I've found all. I did my best to try to convert the electricity with the belt and with all that stuff, and I found it's extremely impractical because the friction at those high speeds with the belts, pulleys, and the chains, the gears, there's too much friction. So, and if you look at all Tesla's actual turbines in the past, he always connected a generator directly to the shaft.
Yeah, because he wanted the high frequency. He wasn't interested in 60 cycles.
Yeah, that yes, and also he didn't want the friction, which you eliminate by having it directly connected to the shaft.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so Joseph Newman, he made a motor, and it's a generator as well. It's the simplest motor / generator that I've ever encountered and that I've ever built. It's like an axial flex generator when you know how you got the coils, you got like 8 coils around the periphery, and then you've got like 8 magnets. and it spins and then the magnet slides past the coils. It's kind of like that. No iron cores involved. But you only need 2 coils, and the 2 coils technically are 1 coil. But you got to wire them together because you got the shaft in the middle. So you got one diametrically magnetized neodymium magnet. And the magnets are so much more powerful than they've had and that Tesla had in the past, DC magnets, that you can make an air core. I made my first tiny Newman generator that I built with a diametrically magnetized magnet was just a magnet with a hole in the center. And by hand, I could spin it at very low RPMs and get over 15 amps. And the volts were, I could get, say, 30 volts by hand just by spinning the rotor by hand. So there's like this direct.
You get the 30 amps or the 15 amps or whatever, and the 30 volts at the same time.
No, and of course that was just showing how strongly the magnetic field was coupled with the coils, the amps. Yeah. So when I spun it, and I did this with the Tesla turbine too in Utah not too long ago. I had the generator attached to the turbine, and just by turning on the turbine, I could get over 15 amps of power out of that coil, and that's not
15 amps is not amps is not power; it's current.
Exactly, it's not the watts. I'm not talking about the watts. It's about the current. So the faster you spin that generator, the higher volts you produce, and the higher volts you produce, the less.
That's basically Faraday's law.
Yes. So to produce a certain amount of watts, you need amps times volts equals watts, and that's power. So the faster that you spin that magnet, the less amps you need to create a greater amount of watts. The faster that magnet spins, the more watts you produce. And you don't have to have as many amps because, 10 amps at 2,000 volts is greater than 500 amps at 1 volt.
Yeah.
So you start to need less and less torque, and less amps if you relate amps to torque and volts to RPM, or you need less and less, or you need less and less torque the higher your RPM goes to make more watts. So
the shaft gets skinnier as the RPM goes up, even though the power would be the same.
Yep. And so it's exponential. The faster you go, the more watts you can make with the same generator. The only problem is with most generators that you directly connect to the shaft is the RPM is so freaking high. The RPM is so high that you start getting eddy currents. The faster you flip the magnetic field inside of the iron core on a normal generator, the less efficient it becomes. Correct?
Well, you're going to start getting hysteresis and skin effect, and all that stuff's going to start rearing its head. That's why really the only way to go is purely electrostatic. It eliminates all of that.
Well, the best way to go is to get rid of those iron cores, and then you're not limited by RPM.
Not necessarily, because then you get a bunch of leakage flux. So the best thing to do is not use magnetism at all. Stay away from it and go purely electrostatic.
I'm trying to learn to run before I fly. I haven't had any problems with the high RPM and like heat losses and stuff. But
there's no reason to be walking for the Mexican border if you're on your way to Canada.
Okay. So then I guess that boils down to the electrostatic effects that happen with Tesla's original power supply, the power supply for his particle beam accelerators.
Yeah, if you've got some kind of conversion process that goes on inside the turbine that produces a substantial quantity of electricity, well, that's something of interest. But at any rate, I'm looking at this from a physical engineering standpoint. Electrostatic generator is the way to go. There's no point, in my mind, of fooling around with anything else because there's not even enough resources or funding to do even what I want to do, not alone get distracted. So
I've got a lot of people who just want dual-stage Tesla turbines, and we could make them on our machine. We got a machine, we can make them. I mean, they're what Tesla intended from day one, or not day one, but as his research moved on, he started moving to dual stage, which was his pump attached to his turbine, of course, you know.
Yeah, Aaron apparently uncovered a lot of stuff not too long ago. We were talking about that. I guess there's some foreign patents or something that revealed more about how Tesla was using multi-stage turbines and what have you. But like I say, that's kind of out of my realm.
Mhm. Yeah, so I guess the best thing that my best idea was to produce, and we've got a lot of people interested in buying this model of two-stage turbine because they can't get it anywhere else. I was thinking, okay, if we could sell enough of these models, turbines, then it can help further fund research and development without asking for donations. Of course, donations will always speed up the research and development exponentially, and they have. That's what we've shown in the past. But if we can sell something, a scientific model for people to buy with a two-stage Tesla turbine, I mean, it's going to be the best thing out there. You know what I mean? And that will fund our true research and development. It'll move from a model to, you know, metal turbine and supersonic speeds and further research in that direction.
Yeah, so Eric, what I'll do is when I went down there to visit Jeremiah with Peter, I took some videos and got a lot of pictures and stuff, and Jeremiah has posted some videos on this, but what I'll do is I'll either make special notations or I'll do kind of a narrated kind of screen recording, and then I'll put that on YouTube or something so that you can, you know, I'll point each thing out so you can kind of, and then, go from there. So.
Yeah, we barely scratched the surface. I mean, of course, we all know that. We've barely scratched the surface. I mean, the first time I ran the cryophorus, it didn't spin. The rotor didn't. I mean, it spun, but really slow. Everyone was like, "Oh no, there's something wrong," and I was like, "No, it's okay. It's not that it doesn't work. It's that we did something wrong." And the next morning, we fixed the problem, and we were running 20,000 RPM with warm water. So it's not that. You know, people always test the Tesla turbine, and they test different Tesla apparatus, and they don't quite follow the direction, and so they end up saying, "Oh, okay, it doesn't work." But really,
that's the whole thing is, well, Tesla, really, we know better today. Let's change this and that. We know better today. then nothing comes out of it.
Yeah. So we just got to follow his directions and continue prototyping because we'll find out what mistakes we've made. You know, the more.
But one advantage we do have today is better materials.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Then Tesla was saying 10 pounds or 10 horsepower for every pound of weight. Imagine if he had the alloys that we had.
Right.
That was 100 years ago. You know.
Yeah, so for anybody listening, Jeremiah is also going to be presenting at the 2020 Energy Science and Technology Conference, and he'll be demonstrating a more advanced version of what you saw in the videos so far. And so you can go to EnergyScienceConference.com and register for that. I think Monday I'll be opening up for ticket sales once I get the whole meal situation figured out. And every year it sells out. It's limited to 150 people. And this year it's probably going to sell out faster than any other conference we've ever done.
and there's a record number of presentation or demonstrations that's going to be at the conference. So it's going to be a pretty exciting year. But anyway, part of this, I just wanted to have Jeremiah and Eric connect because they're kind of working on, two ends of, one kind of system, electrostatic generator, and then the Tesla turbine setup. And I guess, for now you'll do your Newman motor style generator. But as Eric's engineering on the electrostatic side progresses, hopefully we can, see a prototype actually attached to one of your Tesla turbine systems, and move in that direction to see, what the advantages or whatever are, to that kind of system. So hopefully I'll be able to demonstrate at least, the motor side of the electrostatic rotating capacitor, using it as a motor powered by a audio amplifier type system that I'm putting together.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Okay.
I got to see, we don't have any RPM limits, or at least periphery speed limits, other than the strength of our materials. So we'll be able to meet your requirements, or your speed requirements, Eric.
Like 70,000 RPM range, you mean?
Yes. Yeah. And it all depends on the size of the rotor too. Because the smaller the rotor, the faster we can go. But I've noticed in the crafters, because there's no friction, that the only thing that limits the RPM is how well the rotor sounds. It doesn't have anything to do with like how powerful or how much energy we have behind our fluid, because it just sits there and rotates as if there was nothing. It's like, in a vacuum, something a flywheel can rotate almost indefinitely in a perfect vacuum. So usually you have to deal with like the air resistance, the air resistance of moving the fluid with atmospheric pressure. There's those particles in the way, and so you can't spin it without moving those particles, creating friction. And so in the crafters, there's no RPM limit besides there's no speed limit, periphery speed limit besides the actual strength of the material. The centrifugal force will eventually rip any strength material apart if you move it fast enough, which is no problem. So.
One thing I'd like to mention about the turbine project is that, obviously the ideal goal, which Tesla discussed, is an ambient air self-acting engine, which he discussed that in the context of these Tesla turbines operating at not only atmospheric pressure, but also potentially ambient temperatures. His geothermal heat pump type setup using the Tesla turbine setup, that would be 55 degrees?
55 degrees. It doesn't matter what the temperature outside is because you get rid of the condenser. Usually your condenser has to be cold in order to condense the water to take up less space. But if you don't have a condenser, you just have a Tesla pump that creates the vacuum automatically. You don't need to worry about the ambient temperature outside. And also Paul Townley, his idea and his direction is to go to the ultimate, which will be complete ambient air run turbine. I don't personally know how effective it will be without high humidity conditions, but it's possible that you don't need to use the phase change in the oxygen, hydrogen, or oxygen, CO2, and nitrogen in the air. You don't need to make them go through their phase change in order to get a reduction in size with the vacuum, reduction of volume that the gases take up. You get that reduction by cooling them off, by taking the energy out with the vacuum. It's possible that you can run on ambient air. You just need to worry about high speeds and low temperatures. And we definitely want to test that for Paul here, and he might beat us to the punch. But he's got a couple of engineering challenges that he's working through that it's just time will tell, time will tell. But at the very least, we're making it usable and practical now, and it will be better than anything else that we've got on the market today.
Yeah, and even where you have it right now, 170, 180 degree Fahrenheit range, if anybody really looks at it, they could easily have a solar water heater, like the evacuated tube type setups, which are getting cheaper and cheaper. Those are about 98, 99% efficient. And if those were dumping heat into a solar water tank and you had enough volume where the Tesla turbine setup could not drain the temperature, reduce the temperature fast enough, that means you have a good enough thermal flywheel and a big enough tank, solar water tank, that you essentially have a high-speed generator running 24/7, and that's not something off into the future. That's actually something that can be done right now today.
Yes, absolutely. That's right now today technology. And the main thing that you need to worry about is the size of your nozzle. For your system, the volume of the size of your boiler tank your nozzle needs to be a certain size, and based on the speed of your rotor, there's just a few variables there that need to be tuned in to get the highest efficiency out of the energy transfer, and it's just the easiest part of the whole technology. I mean, we're looking at the best of the best, the greatest, possibilities here, but at the very least, we've got something that is 5 times better than our current solar systems. I mean, it's more than 5, but that's just being conservative. 5 times the amount of solar power per square foot.
Okay, well, let's see, we're getting on 90 minutes here. I'll see if maybe anybody has any quick questions, and we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Do you have any electrical questions or anything else specific for Eric, or?
Not really, other than I don't know if I've actually always wanted to ask Eric this question, and it was the apparatus for the utilization of radiant energy. Do you think Tesla was planning on, how he had his particle accelerator and he could make a beam, and he said he could shoot down planes 200 miles away? Do you think maybe that was what he was planning on using to transfer energy wirelessly? I mean, it makes complete sense that you could use the apparatus for utilization of radiant energy to collect that beam, the energy from that beam, and you could potentially transfer as much energy as you wanted 200 miles away from the beam.
Yeah, you might have a horizon problem at 200 miles, but that was he was definitely looking at the receiving as well as the transmitting mode of dealing with that radiant matter, as he called it, whereas actually as Crookes called it. You have to remember that Tesla was an ardent follower of the work of Crookes. So I was trying to figure out a way to come up with a detector for these particular cosmic rays he was talking about, and I put out on the energetic forum some experiments to start with that, but no one really went anywhere with it. But there was a version that used a regular Geiger tube, and every time it took a hit, it rang a bell, which was kind of something I was thinking of as a sales item to make a device that would be all electrical in the Tesla way of doing things and no electronics to speak of, and then every time it picked up a hit, it would ring a bell, and it could be kind of like an amusement for people to have the ringing seismograph or ringing Geiger counter. And in my experiments when I was a child, I learned that hooking Geiger tubes up the way that they're normally hooked up does not give you a really good indication of what they're responding to, because their output's taken in parallel. I put my output in series and could distinguish between the various types of particles coming in. So that was something I had in mind at one time, but there's so many different things, that if I had the opportunity, like Edison, to have 50 people working around the clock and J.P. Morgan's money to keep it all going, then I think, maybe a lot more might get done. But at any rate, on Social Security and handouts, I really can't do too much of anything.
Yeah, it all boils down to the resources that we have to deal with, and the manpower that we have for the manual labor,
Right.
It determines the speed that we go.
Yeah, and then you got to watch out. You give too much information, and then all of a sudden somebody else picks up on it, and then you're left out in the cold. So that's one of the reasons why I will not provide any more information whatsoever on the Tesla telluric transmission system, because people don't care. They'll just jam anything out. They don't care who they interfere with. And everybody and their brother now is fooling with this stuff, and basically what I've done is created a new source of interference for myself by all these idiots that will just put this stuff on the air without a license or allocations or whatever. So that's over with. There will be no more information from me on that subject. Another thing I found out long time ago is I talk about the parts that I use, like this thing in my car that parallels the 12 and 24-volt battery, and then lo and behold, I talk about it on the air, and then people go to the source, they buy up all the parts, and then I can't get any more for myself. So I have to start taking a more capitalistic attitude on how I approach the situation, and ultimately it doesn't really do me any good. No one is providing me with the money to build my laboratory, to do my research, so why should I provide any information?
Yeah. Well, I think I'm pretty optimistic about all of that changing. Hopefully it's allowed to happen. But I've got no doubts that when we put all our minds together here, we can fly through this thing as if it will be no problem. It'll be no problem to get to our end result, what we want, when we put our minds together.
Right.
And I've been following you, and I've been watching your stuff for a long time now, and I always admire your knowledge that you've gained and the experience you've gained, and how well you interpret Tesla's work. And there's a lot of skills that I'm missing, and I've always thought, well, it'd be nice if one day we could all get together and finish the project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Jeremiah. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and take one more question real quick, and if it can be just kind of quick and to the point, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. I do want to mention that if anybody is interested in any of Eric's presentations or ebooks, not the stuff on Amazon, but the digital downloadable stuff, by being on this call, there's a coupon code, all capital letters, EPD25. And if you use that for any of the digital downloadable products, it's not just for Eric's, but it's everything in the entire catalog. I'll keep that coupon code going for just a couple days here. You can go to emediapress.com, and if you scroll down on that home page, you'll see all the listings for the 2019 and the 2018 conference. And then if you mouse over Home in the main menu bar, you'll see Home 2. And if you click on that, that'll be the rest of the catalog. I'm working with somebody right now, and we're going to create a new catalog and revamp the whole website. But in any case, for a few days, any of the digital products, EPD25, all capital letters, and you can get 25% off of anything in the catalog. And so, okay, let's see. I'm going to unmute, and I'll just leave you unmuted for now, Jeremiah. I'm unmuting somebody right now. If you hear yourself being unmuted, go ahead and say your name, where you're from, and go ahead and ask your question. And if we can just kind of keep it brief, we're getting kind of long on the time here, and we're going to wrap up soon. So go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Aaron. Hi, Eric. This is Frank, California. And my question is, First, if you could quickly mention, there was a mention of the Russian paper about parametric variation. Can you let us know where we can get a copy of that?
Oh, I don't know. I've got it filed away here somewhere. So I got the title of it, but that goes back to a long, long time ago in the energetic forum. Somebody came up with that, or shit, that was 10 years ago. So I don't really know where it came from.
Okay.
But I do have it somewhere around here, and I've seen it reorganizing all the papers and books, and I got so much of this stuff it's almost impossible to manage. So, but I try to keep those rare papers in a certain spot. I could when I get into digging around in there, I could give that to Aaron, and he could give it to you, or somehow get it to you. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I greatly appreciate that. It's maybe when Aaron posts a video, if he could put it in the...
But also maybe Aaron remembers what years and what have you. That was all on the energetic forum. When I first got on, that was some channel that Peter Lindemann started, I believe. So maybe it can be tracked down there.
Okay.
That's when people were actually building stuff, and we were talking about this.
So, Eric, you said it's a Russian paper?
Yeah, remember there was that guy, and he actually built one of these things, and it did not produce an energy synthesis situation, but there was a lot of people experimenting and talking and what have you way back, before I even knew you.
Yeah, you mentioned somebody that was trying to build that, and
I almost remember the guy's name, but I can't right off the top. It's so long ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I asked, and nobody came forward in the forum when I asked if anybody knows who that was.
Yeah.
Because I posted that video on that Chris Carson capacitor from when I recorded us in the shop or at my house. And but recently I was talking to Jim Murray, and he mentioned something about this parametric stuff, and he said that there was a Russian, but it sounded like there was a whole book, and he couldn't remember it right offhand, but he said that was kind of an important paper, but they never saw any energy gains or anything, but he said it had a lot of important information, and I couldn't find it. This was just about a month ago, but he said he had a lot of important information on it. But if you do find that paper, yeah, I can upload it and post it in the forum.
Okay.
And anybody on the call or listening to this, I'd recommend going to energeticforum.com and just register for free. A lot of those attachments and documents, you can't see them or download them unless you're actually logged in as a member. And so register for free at energeticforum.com. And as soon as you get an email with any kind of confirmation link or whatever, just reply to whatever email you get from the forum and just type a little sentence that you're asking for access. That way we know it's not a spam bot, and we'll approve your membership right away. And so, yeah, I'll get it posted up as soon as I get a copy from you.
I just found the amp meter.
Oh, on eBay?
The plate amp meter.
Okay. We're doing some shopping for this.
Oh man, did I have to search? I've been going through it all the time we've been talking. And I think after 500 views, I found one that's a little high, but I found another one that's right on. So, at any rate, I guess you probably should call me back or whatever after this. We're over here.
Okay. Yeah, what's being built is something Eric is engineering. That'll be kind of a universal system that I can bring out to the conference and show different demonstrations. Not sure
basically what it is, it's a 1,000 watt high voltage, high fidelity audio amplifier, or what's called a plate modulator for an AM transmitter. So originally, the idea was to use complex waveforms to try to separate the hydrogen and oxygen in water without a lot of energy being involved. And then it turned out that this trunk motor thing also needs something like that. Even though the voltage is only about 2,000 volts, it can be stepped up. Finding the parts for this thing really required divine intervention, which worked, and managed to find some transformers that are probably the last ones of their kind on Earth. And then if I live long enough or the society lasts long enough, probably we can do the cosmic induction generator with the musical discharges and all that. And this will be the modulator for that. But that's a rather exotic project to undertake. But that's kind of the step-by-step process that we're going through with these things.
Yeah, so those more advanced experiments that might be at the 2021 conference. So basically I have two 19-inch Air Force racks. They're about, 6 foot something high. And so one of them is going to be dedicated to all the audio stuff Eric is talking about, and then the second rack is going to have all the radio frequency companion. And when those are mixed together in the right way into a type of a Tesla coil setup, I guess you can say, it'll do like the golden ratio discharges, like what you see on the front of Peter Lindemann's book, that Free Energy Secrets of Cold Electricity book. That was actually one of Eric's coils that he designed.
That was the first one I made at the Integratron.
Okay. So the goal is to complete the audio, and that rack should be done for this conference to demonstrate some basic stuff. 2021, the RF one will be done. So a lot of these experiments that Eric did in the past, that's the kind of stuff we would like to re-demonstrate to everybody, because most people have never seen any of that stuff or even, know as much about it. So.
Okay, Eric, one last quick thing on that regarding parametric. Is there any other information you can recommend to read about to understand or better the parametric oscillation topic?
Well, there's not a lot written on that, and it turns into a mathematical nightmare. So I don't really know where you could begin on it. I wrote some stuff on the energetic forum about it. That paper's pretty thorough.
Okay, I look forward to it.
Actually, Steinmetz has he's got several chapters on it in his AC, Theory and Calculation of Alternating Current Phenomena. And it's called, the title of the main chapter is Reaction Machines.
Okay.
And then I wrote a paper on the energetic forum on those. I think it was called The 4 something aspects of electric induction, or it really needs to be severely edited. It was put together really bad, a lot of misspelling and bad formatting, but I've got that here somewhere. I don't know. Do you have any idea what that might be, Aaron? Remember there was like kind of that Lone Pine Writings 2 or whatever?
Was it like the energy exchange?
Yeah, four quadrant energy exchange.
Okay.
Can you confirm that title easily from where you're sitting?
Yeah, I'll check.
I think that's probably going to be the most practical mathematical statements on the subject. And like I say, the way to pursue this is to be using what's called the magnetic amplifier.
Okay,
which is a saturation type of device, and that would finally determine one way or another is this energy synthesis possible.
Okay, so the title is 4-Quadrant Energy Exchange in Magnetic and Dielectric Fields of Induction, Part 1. And I'd guess there's more than one part, but that's, you can find that in Energetic Forum. So 4-Quadrant Energy Exchange in Magnetic and Dielectric Fields of Induction.
Okay, thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it. And the one quick question I have, a Tesla coil, if I could just do that. I know Aaron's trying to wrap up the call. I know it's important to have a good understanding of Tesla coils, and I have a basic question about it. Why is a Tesla coil a single layer instead of a multi-layer? Is it because of the voltage magnification of standing waves that cannot be obtained on a multi-layer?
No, that can be any number of layers, but as the frequency gets high, the single layer, of course, has less capacitance and what have you, and less dielectric losses and all that kind of stuff. But you have to remember that his first transformers, the ones that operated around 15, 20 kilocycles, were quite a few layers. Okay. And the Alexanderson coils are they're also 8 layers deep in the form of flat spirals. So it does not have to be single layer until you get up into about the broadcast band, and then at that point there would be nothing gained by making it multiple layer. It would just interfere with the process.
Okay, I see. Okay, so it's strictly it's a frequency related.
Yeah.
Issue. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Eric.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
So are there any more questions, or have we kind of warned everybody out?
Yeah, there's a couple here.
Okay.
Let's see. I'm unmuting you. Looks like you got a 44 country code. I think that's in the UK. You're unmuted. Go ahead and introduce yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello, guys. This is Michael from Europe. And I have a lot of questions, but I will be brief. The first thing is about the musical television. That's very interesting for me. And could you go more about that?
Yeah, that's something, if I had the means, I'd be putting it together right now because I want it in my sound rack. It's, I'm not really interested in talking too much about it, just to have somebody else build it, so then I don't get the opportunity, but it's kind of an XY type of oscilloscope. So you put the horizontal to like the left channel and the vertical to the right. That gives you what in television is called the raster. And then there's a video input that comes from a network that works with the harmonics and what have you to control the intensity. It goes into the cathode of the cathode ray tube or the grid, whichever one you put the video in. So basically it works like a television, and then with the right type of video and the proper gain regulating networks, it gives you a fantastic image, almost like an animus, I think, is there's a ancient musician, well, not totally ancient, it was like the 1500s, that believed that when music was played, it created an organism in the space that it was played in. And this allows you to see the organism. So I would, if I had the means, I would, assemble that and make them available as a product, but I don't have the means to do any of that, and I am no longer interested in giving people instructions how to build stuff that then I don't get to build it. So I'm sorry I have to be like that, but that's the way the world operated on me, so that's the way I operate with the world.
Okay. Is the pipe organ do the same thing in space?
What's that now?
With the pipe organ, create the same thing in space.
Exactly.
That organism. Okay.
Yeah.
And the next thing I want to talk about is the Earth stereo. And can you do that? If I remember when you were talking about the Earth stereo, you were listening to ancient China music, and
there was
light bulb went up in space.
The Chinese jam other people's signals. So what they did is they would jam other international shortwave stations with Chinese classical music, which is the Asian music runs about an octave higher than the Western music. So the higher pitch and the waveforms was an excellent jamming signal. The only complication with trying to listen to that is you usually had to hear the station that they were jamming, but when I got the right antenna patterns, then I would have two separate antennas, like two separate microphones, one going off like your left ear and one going off like your right ear, and then that would go into a special HF receiver, and then would go into the sound system, the stereo sound system, and the individual instruments would move around in the room depending upon what the solar ionospheric conditions were and produce some of the most fantastic effects. So I have, they're in a situation of duress right now because there's no money to move them, but I have acquired the necessary RCA receivers to do this again. But not only is there no money to move the receivers to here, but there's absolutely no money whatsoever to build the antennas or related facilities to install these things. And unfortunately, digital totalitarianism is taking away all international shortwave broadcasting. So there's no longer a lot of stations available anymore to do listening. So you'd have to build as a transmitter site at 2 skip distances or more away from the receiving site, and then play your music into the transmitter site. Let the Earth ionosphere wave propagating medium convert that into this other type of stereo, and then put that out, in a broadcast form on the internet or whatever's available now. So that actually is part of the musical seismograph project. So the musical seismograph, the seismic transducers will deal with like the inside of the Earth, and then the HF will deal with the ionosphere, and then the telluric receiving equipment will deal with, the geoelectric signals and what have you, and then all of that will go out on some channel on the internet for people to listen to. But that's a $750,000 project. Got $750,000 you want to give me?
Yep. Okay.
Don't hold your breath. And at age 68, I'm not holding my breath either.
Yeah, understand. Okay, I have another question. During the times of landers, I think you had, at one point you said that you had large piece of crystal off of submarine sonar, and that crystal was giving was changing polarity of the electricity with the phases of the moon, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was something that Chris Carson got.
The crystal was stuck in the ground.
Yeah, it was a sonar transducer. It was a big one. Fair Radio used to have these, and then I made the mistake of talking about it on the air, and they all vanished. And I lost mine that Chris Carson got for me, because he was the one that was doing those experiments and put it on a strip chart recorder. For one thing, it was a question is, this thing would produce a very large quantity of electricity at a certain time of day that if you touched it, it'd knock you on the floor. So the question was, where'd this electricity come from? And it wouldn't do it at the same time every day, nor would it do it the same amount. And then Chris had determined that it was tied in heavily with weather patterns and the position of the moon and what have you. So what I did is to eliminate influences of wind and temperature change and what have you. At landers, I buried it in the ground, and then I plugged it into the auxiliary strip chart recorder and watched the various certain weather patterns and what have you, solar activity, and to see how this thing responded. But that's all lost now, and I don't know where you could find one of those. Not all of those sonar transducers do that. This was a rare one that did, and I don't know where you would find any kind of piezoelectric crystal, that would produce these kind of effects. So there's got to be something floating around out there somewhere, but I don't know which way to direct you. But maybe you could just start searching around for sonar transducers.
I'm not searching about it. It's just it's very interesting for me.
Yeah.
I'm not planning to do anything. It's just out of pure interest.
Well, it definitely showed that that energy is available from the ambient medium because there's no physical force or anything on that crystal to produce that much electrical power.
Do you think that's related somehow with Nathan Stubblefield stuff?
No, but there's some kind of connection between capacitance, the velocity of light, and gravity.
Okay, when we talk about the gravity, where is the gravity in the balloon of helium?
Well, I don't know too much about it. I can't really speak about gravity or helium, but one thing I do know is that it's generally felt that gravity and electrostatics have a common connection. And capacitance is something that holds the electrostatic forces and energy. But if the velocity of light changes, the capacitance changes. So if the capacitance changes, that change of capacitance is a parametric situation that can produce an electrostatic potential. If gravity changes, that could do the same thing. Or if there's some combination of all these things that nobody's really got yet, something is changing the electrostatic dimensions, not the physical dimensions, the electrostatic dimensions of that sonar crystal, and then accordingly, whatever flux it's captured from the environment is charged or discharged into whatever the crystal is connected to. So it's an interesting, it opens up a lot of interesting ideas, but then where do you go with something like that with limited resources or not even knowing what the crystal's made out of? But it opens up a lot of interesting questions and ideas. And if possible, something like that should be permanently set up and a long-term analysis done with the recorder. I don't have those facilities anymore.
Okay. And I have another question about the monopolar, the Tesla monopolar transmission. So that the TMT works through the ground. And if it's working through the ground, can you do it working for like aerial applications, to talking to airplanes or talking to cars?
Well, that's a possibility. So, because there is kind of the need for, with NASA and all that, for some type of communication system in outer space that doesn't have attenuation or delay, particularly the delay. And a monopolar electrostatic force would be one way to do that. But, then you would have to get their cooperation to do experiments. I tried. I got people on the inside. But at this day and age, everybody is so wrapped up in their distractions. It's not really possible to do much anything anymore. And also, the Navy moved out, and it's become a civilian facility. And in that area, in the San Francisco Bay Area, that's the kiss of death. So you can't do anything there anymore. But I've always been interested in the extraluminal communications. And I believe that if you took the Bell Telephone Laboratories approach and get the right group of people together, like they did with the transistor, and even though that everybody in the group doesn't have a clue of how to do what they want to do, once they get together and start, they figure it out. And if that's kind of what I envision for EPD Laboratories, but the necessary people and money hasn't shown up. But I truly believe that that's the start. That monopolar electrostatic is the start for extraluminal communications in outer space, because it definitely doesn't seem to correspond to the velocity of light when it's in the telluric mode inside the Earth. Seems like the velocity of light has nothing to do with any of this anymore. I've given a number of presentations on that subject, and even the textbooks of the masters that I have here on telephone transmission theory all warn to stay away from velocity. It's an illusion.
Okay. And you once said that to create the Tesla X-rays, you need radar pulse wave modulators. And my question is, what's the difference between where is the difference between Tesla X-rays, which are legitimately helpful to the human body, and where is the death ray? What's the difference between the two, technically speaking?
The Tesla X-ray is a monopolar X-ray tube. It doesn't have two electrodes, so it's more of a cosmic ray generator. The Tesla death ray actually is physical and launches physical particles, vaporized mercury. So you're not dealing with, atomic so-called particles. You're dealing with actual physical particles. So that Tesla called his X-ray radiant matter, and they're all one terminal, and that's the way the original X-ray tubes were. And if he didn't end up getting killed from all the exposure that he had to that stuff, then they're definitely a lot safer than the X-rays that are used today, and they're also a lot more effective in producing photographs. It actually could, if you went back to the Tesla method of doing this and perfected it, probably come with much superior X-ray equipment.
Would be beneficial for the medicine.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have any experience with the organ accumulators running with plants or mushrooms, and how they react? If you ever had experience before.
Not that kind of experience, no. But I was experienced in using them in agriculture. The plants seem to respond favorably.
Mm-hmm. And once you were radiating somebody's seeds with microwave radiation, they end up grew up quicker. Uh-huh. And what exactly do you do?
What's that? I didn't get what you were saying. What was that?
How exactly you do that? With how much radiation do you expose the seeds to?
That was milliwatts.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use your cellular telephone.
Oh, that's enough for that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Just take the seeds and glue them to your silly phone, and then blather on it for a couple of days, and then plant them. And have a control set of seeds, that are glued to a silly phone that's not connected to anything, but is in the same environment, to keep it scientific, and then compare the two. So I used 3,700 megacycles, and it was a half-watt Bell telephone microwave transmitter. And I think the seeds ended up maybe getting about 10 milliwatts out of it inside the waveguide. So I've talked about that a lot. If you could go back to any of my talking with people on this, I've covered that story rather extensively.
Yeah. And when you were in the Navy, sorry about my English, it's terrible, I know, but I'm doing my best. When you were in the Navy and did that thing with the synchronous machines, that you turn the kilowatt meter backwards, and can you do this locally? For example, if I have like a 10 kilowatt three-phase generator and a small three-phase transformer and synchronous condenser, can I repeat the same thing? Can I get the same effects as you have with the system?
You should be able to, but it will not turn the kilowatt hour meter backwards. It'll turn the kilovar meter backwards and you normally don't have one of those on a residence. And what it does at the other end, you know, at the substation or what have you, well, that's going to be, you don't have access to that to make any determination of what's happening in between.
Mm-hmm.
But I found just using regular capacitors worked quite well, that I could get more power into an area where the power was limited than if I didn't use them. But the power company would have had a fit because it was heating their transformers and wires and all that, but it did not show up on the kilowatt hour meter in the house because it was reactive energy. So you kind of have an industrial facility, you know, to be able to do any of this stuff with rotating machines, three-phase power, you know, and all that kind of stuff. These are all things that I'm interested in working on, but I can't really get a laboratory together to carry this much farther, and I don't have access to any of these big facilities anymore. That's pretty much over with.
Mm-hmm. And what is your comment about the 5G? They say that it's not ionizing radiation, but it's.
I think it's hideous. I think it's one of the most ill-conceived, hideous things that the human mind has ever conceived.
But they will do it globally.
Of course.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunate.
Well, you want it, right? Everybody wants their bandwidth. They want to yak away mindless on their silly phones. They want more bandwidth. Well, hey, the beast will feed you whatever you demand, all the way up to the point that it kills you.
Mm-hmm. And AI.
So demand more bandwidth.
The 5G will give birth to the AI.
Yeah, basically, digital is building the body for the biblical beast.
Mm-hmm. And
digital is the most evil, totalitarian, destructive thing to ever fall upon the human race.
And what do you think about it when you look at from the Wilhelm Reich's view? I would like to ask that question, Wilhelm Reich, what he thinks about it.
I don't know enough about it until experiments are done. I know he wouldn't be approving of the idea. He didn't seem to think that electrical waves and orgone mixed together too well, but then he was kind of early in the game, so until more experiments are done, it's hard to say. But the experiments that I did way back showed me that it's not healthy to be around this stuff. And now it's worse than ever. So I think probably at that point we'll wrap it up. I'm getting kind of tired.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for the answers.
Yep.
And thank you.
Okay. Well, we're on 2 hours and 15 minutes. Thanks for being on the call, everybody, and thanks, Eric. And so if anybody can go to ericpdollar.com, and if you're able to help support UPD Laboratories, Inc. with a donation by PayPal or through the mail, that'd be greatly appreciated. That's the, pays the bills and keeps the lights on. And so, Eric will be coming to the conference, so will Jeremiah. It's going to be an amazing conference, probably the best one yet. And go to EnergyScienceConference.com and go ahead and register for free, and we'll open up for payments on Monday for tickets. And remember, the EPD25 is a coupon code, all uppercase. You can get 25% off everything in the catalog. And I'll try to get this up on YouTube, within the next week or so. And so, let's see. Anyway, thanks. So thanks a lot, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks, Dollard. Have a good one.
Okay. You're welcome.
Hey, have a good weekend, everybody.
You call me, Aaron?
Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, I'll give you a call.
Okay. I'll be here.
Okay. See you, everybody.
Bye. Bye.